This is a Salvia Divinorum trip report by Psychotria, posted to erowid.org on June 22, 2005. I am writing this account as a record of my second encounter with Salvia Divinorum. The tincture I used was the Sage Goddess Emerald Essence product that Daniel Siebert distributes. The dose I measured was 4 full droppers of the tincture, which I diluted with 3 full droppers of hot water as instructed in the pamphlet that accompanied the bottle. The instructions said to hold the mixture under the tongue for 15 minutes before swallowing. My body weight at the time was 126 pounds, and I am a male. I had never taken any recreational or spiritual drug before this, other than salvia. I was aware that salvia can produce experiences that are far beyond ordinary consciousness, and I accepted that risk willingly. My intention for this session was simple. I wanted to see what the plant could show me, to learn whether it would teach me something or simply observe me. I was not looking for a mystical revelation or a therapeutic breakthrough. I wanted to be a neutral observer, to note the details of whatever unfolded, and to see how the plant would react to my presence. I also wanted to test the preparation method that Daniel Siebert recommends, because I had read many accounts that described a slow, steady absorption when the tincture is held sublingually for a longer period. The evening began with a quiet routine. I turned off the television, closed the blinds, and dimmed the lights in the living room. I placed a soft cushion on the couch, set a small table within reach, and laid out a pair of headphones. I had already created a playlist of ambient tracks from MP3, calm that I thought would be gentle enough not to interfere with the salvia experience. I also placed a glass of water nearby in case I needed to rinse my mouth. I measured the 4 droppers of emerald essence into a small glass vial. The liquid was a dark green, almost black, with a faint, earthy scent that reminded me of fresh-cut sage. I then added 3 droppers of hot water, watching the tincture thin out and become a slightly lighter green. I swirled the mixture gently, feeling the heat of the water rise to a comfortable temperature. I placed the vial against my lower lip and let the liquid sit under my tongue. At first the taste was bitter, like a strong herbal tea. The heat from the water made the sensation a little more tolerable. I kept the mixture there, counting slowly in my head, trying to focus on my breathing. I told myself that I would keep it there for 15 minutes, as the pamphlet instructed. I felt a slight tingling on the floor of my mouth, as if the chemical was beginning to dissolve into the mucous membranes. After about 2 minutes, the room seemed to shift. The floorboards creaked in a way that I had not noticed before. A low rumble began in the walls, faint at first, then growing louder. It felt as though the house itself was trembling, like a distant train passing underneath, or perhaps like a small earthquake. My heart began to beat faster, not from fear but from the sudden physical awareness that something was changing. The tremor was not violent, but it was persistent. I could feel the couch vibrate beneath me, and the glass of water on the table swayed slightly. I tried to stay calm. I reminded myself that salvia can cause intense physical sensations, and that the shaking might be a side effect of the chemical entering my system. I also reminded myself that I had not taken a sitter, and that I needed to keep my environment as safe as possible. I decided to stay seated, keeping my feet planted firmly on the floor, and to continue holding the tincture under my tongue for the full 15 minutes. The shaking continued, growing in intensity. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting with each pulse. The light in the room flickered, casting strange shadows across the ceiling. I could feel my muscles tense and relax in an irregular rhythm, as if my body was trying to adjust to an invisible force. My mind began to race with images that were both familiar and strange. I saw flashes of a garden lit by an impossible light, heard distant laughter that sounded both human and animal, and felt a pressure on my left leg that I could not locate. At the 5-minute mark, I made a decision. I was aware that I was a novice, and that I had not prepared a sitter. I also sensed that the shaking was becoming more pronounced, and that my balance might be compromised if I stayed in this state for much longer. I decided to swallow the preparation rather than continue to hold it sublingually. I tipped the vial back and let the liquid flow down my throat, feeling it slide over the back of my tongue and into my stomach. The taste was still bitter, but now it was mixed with the hot water, making it slightly more palatable. Almost immediately after I swallowed, the tremors in the house seemed to amplify. The couch rocked gently, and I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me. My vision began to blur at the edges, and the colors in the room shifted toward a greenish hue. I placed my headphones over my ears, pressed the play button on my playlist, and let the ambient sounds fill the space. The music was low and droning, with occasional high-pitched tones that seemed to echo in the distance. The combination of the shaking, the music, and the chemical beginning to take effect created a sense of disorientation that was both unsettling and oddly compelling. I closed my eyes, allowing the sound to guide me, and tried to focus on my breathing. I inhaled slowly through my nose, feeling the cool air fill my lungs, and exhaled through my mouth, releasing the tension in my shoulders. The tremors continued, but now they felt less like an external force and more like an internal vibration, as if my whole body were resonating with an unseen frequency. Within a few minutes, the ambient music faded into the background, replaced by a series of vivid visual impressions that seemed to arise from nowhere. I was no longer looking at the physical walls of my living room. Instead, I found myself in a strange garden that existed beyond ordinary space. The garden was illuminated by a soft, otherworldly glow that seemed to emanate from the leaves themselves. The vines were thick and twisted, their surfaces covered in tiny, luminescent nodes that pulsed in time with an invisible rhythm. 2 elderly women appeared in the garden. Their faces were lined with deep wrinkles, and their eyes shone with a strange, almost manic light. They wore long, flowing robes that seemed to be woven from shadows. They laughed together, a sound that was both cruel and delighted, and spoke words that I could not understand. Their presence felt both inviting and threatening, as if they were guardians of a secret that I was not meant to see. The ground beneath me shifted, and a massive flower rose up from the soil. Its petals were large, glossy, and an odd shade of violet that reminded me of bruised fruit. The flower bent toward my left leg, and its petals wrapped around me gently, as if wanting to drink from my flesh. I could feel the pressure of the petals, and at the same time I sensed a kind of awareness within the flower. It seemed to think, to have a personality, and to be curious about my presence. While I was still feeling the flower's touch, 2 wolves emerged from the darkness of the garden. They walked on their hind legs, their fur a silvery gray, their eyes bright and intelligent. One stood at my right side, the other at my feet. They looked at me and exchanged low growls that sounded almost like a conversation. Their heads tilted as if they were trying to understand my thoughts. The wolves did not attack. They simply observed, as if they were witnesses to a ceremony that was taking place. The garden began to dissolve, and I found myself in a dark, empty space. In the distance, a door glowed with a faint amber light. The door seemed to be a threshold to a deeper level of the experience, a place that promised greater insight or perhaps greater confusion. To my left, a figure in a strange, multicolored robe appeared. The figure looked at me with a mixture of disappointment and disapproval. He spoke without words, his expression telling me that I was not yet ready to pass through the door and enter the fullest domain of Salvia. He gestured toward the lower levels, indicating that I would have to remain there for the time being. Other fleeting images passed through my mind. I saw tiny elfin creatures of green and purple, their wings shimmering like soap bubbles. I sensed unseen sentiences moving around me, aware of my presence and curious about my thoughts. The plants in the garden seemed to be alive, thinking, and aware that I was there. Their leaves whispered in a language that I could not decode, but the feeling was one of gentle invitation. I opened my eyes briefly, hoping to see the physical room again, but the greenish tint remained. The couch, the table, the lamp, all were still there, but they were now framed by an invisible circle of vines that seemed to pulse with a soft emerald light. The shaking of the house continued, but it no longer felt like an external earthquake. It felt like the house itself had become a vessel, a spacecraft that was moving through an unseen void. I could imagine controls flickering on a console, lights blinking, and a sense of propulsion that was both exhilarating and terrifying. I tried to move, but my body felt heavy, as if gravity had changed its direction. My left leg, still touched by the flower, felt a strange mixture of pressure and tenderness. The wolves remained at my sides, their eyes following my every move. The elderly women from the garden were no longer visible, but their laughter echoed faintly in the background, like a distant radio station. At this point, the music I had been listening to seemed to merge with the sounds of the environment. The low drones of the ambient track blended with the rustle of leaves, the soft panting of the wolves, and the faint hum of the imagined spacecraft. The combination created a soundscape that filled my entire being, as if the music were not just heard but felt inside my bones. I realized that I was still in the early part of the peak. The intensity of the visual and auditory impressions was rising, but there was still a sense of distance, as if I were watching a movie from a seat in a theater rather than being fully inside the story. My mind tried to grasp at the meaning of the garden, the wolves, the flower, and the disapproving robed figure. I felt a mixture of curiosity, awe, and a small thread of fear. I wanted to explore further, but I also sensed that the experience was moving quickly, that the chemicals were taking me deeper with each passing second. I decided to stay still, to let the sensations settle into my body. I focused on the feeling of the flower's petals on my leg, the weight of the wolf's presence, and the subtle vibration of the imagined spacecraft. I let the green light of the vines wash over me, and I allowed the amber glow of the distant door to remain a faint beacon in the background. The shaking of the house continued, but it no longer felt threatening. It felt like a rhythmic pulse, a reminder that I was moving through a space that was both my own and not my own. In this moment, I felt a strange clarity. The garden, the wolves, the flower, the robed figure, all of them seemed to be parts of a larger picture that I could not yet comprehend. I sensed that the salvia was not trying to teach me in a direct way, but rather was offering me a chance to observe its own consciousness, to see how it interacts with a human mind that is willing to listen. I felt humbled by the experience, aware that I was a small participant in something far larger than myself. I remained in this state for several more minutes, feeling the early peak settle into a steady rhythm. The shaking of the house began to lessen, the green tint of my vision softened, and the sounds of the imagined spacecraft faded into a low hum. The wolves stayed at my side, their eyes still watching. The flower's petals loosened their grip, and the garden receded into the background, leaving me with the lingering impression of its scent, a sweet, earthy aroma that reminded me of fresh rain on moss. I could feel my breath becoming deeper, more deliberate. My heart beat in a slow, steady pattern, matching the pulse of the imagined spacecraft. I sensed that the experience was moving toward a deeper level, but I had not yet crossed the threshold of the amber door. The robed figure's disapproving look lingered in my mind, a reminder that there were limits to what I could explore at this moment. I sat there, on the couch, surrounded by the faint glow of the vines, listening to the low hum of the imagined controls, feeling the presence of the wolves, and waiting for the next wave of the salvia's influence to arrive. The house was still trembling, but the tremor was now a gentle sway, like a boat on the surface of a calm sea. The light from the street lamp outside flickers through the curtains, casting thin bars across the floor. My mind feels as though it is moving through a thick syrup, each thought taking longer to form, each image stretching out like a film that will not cut. I keep my eyes closed, but the darkness behind my lids is full of color. The vines that I sensed earlier now pulse with a soft green glow, as if they are breathing. A sudden pressure builds behind my sternum. It is not painful, but it feels like a hand pressing gently on my chest, urging me forward. The pressure rises, then releases, and in that release I sense a wave of sound. The music that I had left playing on the speakers is now inside my head, each beat resonating against the walls of my skull. The bass thumps like a drum in a cavern. The synths rise and fall like a tide. My body begins to vibrate in response, as though the floor beneath me were a speaker itself. I feel my limbs loosen. My left arm lifts without my command, fingers splayed as if reaching for something invisible. My right leg twitches, then steadies, and I notice a tingling sensation running up the spine, like a line of tiny lights traveling upward. The tingling spreads to my shoulders, then to my neck, and finally to the back of my head. My hair stands on end, though there is no wind. The sensation is both strange and familiar, as if I have been waiting for it all my life. The violet door that had glimmered in the distance begins to draw nearer. I can sense it more than see it. It is not a physical door. It is a shift in the quality of the air around me. The air becomes thicker, richer, and I feel as though I could inhale the whole room in a single breath. I take a deep breath, and the scent that had been faint earlier now fills my nostrils completely. It is the sweet, earthy smell of rain on moss, mixed with a faint metallic tang that reminds me of fresh steel. The scent is grounding, yet it also lifts me. The robed figure that had watched me earlier appears again, but this time the disapproval is gone. The figure's eyes are now soft, almost amused. The figure does not speak, but I understand that I am being invited to move through the doorway. I feel a pull at the base of my skull, as though a thread is being tugged. I allow it, and the world around me begins to dissolve. The walls of my living room melt away like wax. I am no longer in my house. I am floating in a vast, dark space, punctuated by points of light that flicker like distant stars. Between the stars there are ribbons of color, shifting slowly from deep indigo to bright teal. The ribbons move in a slow, rhythmic pattern, as if they are breathing. I am surrounded by these ribbons, and they seem to wrap around me, embracing me. The Salvia Maiden appears. She is not a human figure, but a shape of light and plant. Her form is made of intertwined vines, leaves, and blossoms that glow from within. She moves with a fluid grace, each motion sending a ripple through the surrounding ribbons. She does not speak, but her presence is warm and inviting. I feel a surge of affection and curiosity. I reach out, and my hand passes through her, yet I sense a connection, like two wires touching. The connection is a flood of sensations. I feel the texture of bark, the softness of moss, the coolness of water on a river stone. I feel a pulse that matches my own heartbeat, but amplified. I feel the taste of fresh sap on my tongue, sweet and slightly bitter. I feel the echo of distant laughter, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of an animal I cannot identify. All of these sensations blend into a single experience that is both overwhelming and intimate. The maiden leads me deeper into the space. We move past a garden of impossible plants. Some plants have leaves that are translucent, showing veins that glow with inner light. Others have flowers that open and close in time with the music that still pulses inside my head. The garden is alive, each plant responding to my presence. When I focus on a particular flower, it expands, its petals unfurling in a slow, deliberate motion, releasing a perfume that fills the air. The perfume is not just smell, it is a feeling of contentment, a sense of safety. I notice that the music has changed. The synths are now softer, more melodic, and the bass is a low hum that seems to vibrate through the ground. The rhythm is slower, and I find myself moving in time with it, even though I have no legs to move. My body feels light, as if I could float away at any moment. I am aware of a subtle heat spreading from my core outward, like a gentle fire that does not burn. The Salvia Maiden stops near a pool of liquid that reflects the ribbons of color above. The surface of the pool is smooth, like glass, and when I look into it, I see not my own face, but a mosaic of images. Childhood memories, moments of joy, moments of fear, all blended together. I see the image of the robed figure again, but now the figure is smiling, nodding in approval. I understand that the figure represents a part of myself that was hesitant, and now it is accepting the journey. I reach out and touch the surface of the pool. The liquid is cool, and as my fingers break the surface, ripples spread outward. The ripples carry the images with them, and they begin to rearrange, forming new patterns. I see a scene of a forest at dawn, the sun just breaking over the horizon, casting golden light on the mossy floor. I hear the sound of birds, the rustle of leaves, the distant rush of a stream. The scene feels real, as if I could step into it. The Salvia Maiden steps into the pool, and as she does, the water glows brighter. The light spreads outward, filling the entire space with a soft, warm illumination. The ribbons of color above pulse in time with the light, creating a harmonious dance. I feel a deep sense of unity, as though I am part of the light, part of the ribbons, part of the maiden, part of the garden, part of the music. My sense of self expands, and I no longer feel separate from anything. The peak of the experience holds me in this state for what feels like an eternity. Yet I know that time is not moving in the same way as in the world outside. I am aware of my breathing, slow and deep, each inhale drawing in the sweet scent, each exhale releasing a soft sigh. My heart beats steadily, and I can feel the blood moving through my veins, warm and alive. Eventually, the light begins to dim slightly. The ribbons slow their pulse. The music drops to a low, steady tone. The Salvia Maiden looks at me with eyes that are both ancient and youthful. She does not speak, but I sense that she is preparing to leave, that the time for this part of the journey is ending. I feel a gentle tug at the base of my skull again, a reminder that I must return. The garden starts to dissolve. The plants shrink, their colors fading until they are nothing more than faint outlines. The pool evaporates, leaving a thin mist that hovers in the air. The ribbons of color collapse into a single point of light, bright and focused. The point of light expands, filling my vision, and then it contracts, pulling me back toward the place where I first felt the pressure behind my sternum. I am back in the room that was once my living room. The couch is still there, the street lamp still casts its bars across the floor. The house is still gently swaying, as if a small boat were still moving on calm water. The music is still playing, but now it is softer, as if the speakers are far away. The scent of rain on moss lingers, but it is less intense. My body feels heavy, as if the weight of the experience is still pressing down on me, yet my mind feels clear, as if a fog has lifted. The plateau begins. I am no longer in the vivid visions, but the afterglow remains. My thoughts are slower, more deliberate. I notice the texture of the couch cushions under my fingers, the slight give of the fabric, the way the light catches on the dust motes in the air. I feel a faint warmth in my hands, as if the energy from the garden is still flowing through me. My breath is deep, and each exhale releases a small amount of the lingering scent. I sit still for a while, allowing the sensations to settle. I am aware of my heartbeat, steady and calm. I notice that my muscles are relaxed, but there is a subtle tension in my shoulders, as if they have been holding something that is now released. I feel a slight tingling in my fingertips, like the aftereffect of a mild electric current. The feeling is pleasant, not uncomfortable. The music changes again, this time to a simple ambient track with soft piano chords. The chords are slow, each note lingering before fading. The sound seems to match the rhythm of my thoughts. I find myself humming along, though I do not make any sound. My mind drifts back to the garden, to the maiden, to the pool, to the vines that wrapped around me. I try to hold on to the feeling of unity, but it begins to slip like water through cupped hands. I notice a slight ache in my jaw. It is a reminder that I have been holding my mouth closed tightly during the experience. I open my mouth slowly, letting the muscles relax. The ache eases. I also notice that my eyes feel a little dry, as if they have been open for a long time, even though they have been closed. I blink several times, and the dryness recedes. The come-down continues. The vivid colors fade, the sounds become ordinary, the sensations become ordinary. I am aware of the ticking of the wall clock, the distant hum of traffic outside. My mind returns to everyday concerns. The need to get up, to make a phone call, to eat something. Yet there is a lingering sense that something has shifted inside me. I feel more aware of the small details of my environment, more present in each moment. I stand up from the couch, feeling the floor beneath my feet. The wood is cool, the carpet under my shoes is soft. I stretch my arms overhead, feeling a stretch through my back and shoulders. The stretch is accompanied by a gentle sigh that escapes my lips. I notice that my breath is still deep, and that my chest rises and falls in a calm rhythm. I walk to the kitchen. The light from the street lamp now casts a pale glow through the window, illuminating the countertop. I open the fridge, the cool air hits my face, and I see a bottle of water. I pour a glass, the water glistening in the light. I take a sip, feeling the cool liquid travel down my throat, washing away any remaining dryness. The water tastes plain, but there is a faint aftertaste of the mossy scent, as if the experience has left a residue on my palate. I sit at the kitchen table, looking out at the street. The world outside is quiet, the night air still. I feel a sense of calm that I have not felt before. My thoughts are still slower, but they are not chaotic. I can focus on a single idea without being pulled in many directions. I think about the Salvia Maiden, about the garden, about the sense of unity I felt. I consider what it might mean for me. In the reflection, I realized that the plant did not act as a teacher in a conventional sense. It offered a space where I could explore sensations that I normally do not allow myself to feel. It showed me that my mind can hold many layers of experience at once, that the boundaries I place on my perception are not fixed. The experience also revealed a part of me that is curious, that wants to explore, that is not afraid of the unknown. The robed figure that once disapproved now smiles, indicating that I am ready to go deeper when the time is right. I write down some notes in a notebook, describing the colors, the sounds, the feelings. I try to capture the details while they are still fresh. I note the pressure behind my sternum, the tingling up my spine, the scent of rain on moss, the feeling of vines wrapping around my leg, the way the music seemed to fill my body. I also note the emotional tone, a mixture of awe, curiosity, and a gentle joy that I have not felt in a long time. I think about how the experience might influence my daily life.